to show y'all a concept that when you see it, it's gonna change your makeup game forever. It's essentially the most simple and straightforward way to show you how to use temperature in your makeup. I already made a video debunking the idea that you need to match your makeup to your undertones, but these are fundamentals that I use and refer to all the time in my regular makeup videos and my reviews, and I really wanted to have a touch point for people to refer to understand what's going on in my head when I'm talking about using temperature. So I'm gonna split my face like I usually do, but we're going to show temperature from a contour and bronzer standpoint on this side, and then I'm going to show you from a color cosmetic standpoint on this side. We're going to break down what temperature actually is, how to compare colors to see what they are in terms of warmth and coolness, and I promise y'all by the end of this video, you're going to have a really firm grasp on temperature and how to use it in your makeup to achieve what you're going for. So let's go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to zoom through real quick using my Lisa Aldridge. This is the skin tint. I have it in T2. It's incredible. It's the best stuff ever, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the demonstration. I just didn't want to get on camera with like a white face. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is distinguishing temperature in the makeup that you're using, because there are a lot of schools of thought out there that want to treat warm and cool as binaries. I've said this in my videos in the past, and it's something that I really live by. I think that everything is relative and temperature is definitely relative. So when we're talking about a cool tone, yes, in the color seasons and things like that, they will try to talk about cool colors and warm colors and those colors having really firm identities. And that can be a more simplified way to understand those things, but I want to empower you to kind of understand and contextualize your entire makeup collection as to how they relate to one another so that you can get multiple uses out of every item. So really we're talking about something being warm compared to what's next to it or cool compared to what's next to it. So a bronzer could be a contour, okay? I know I always preach about like, this isn't a contour, this is a bronzer. On me, for my preferences kind of thing. There are plenty of people in my comments who either have very cool complexions or very pale olive complexions who can only use contours as bronzers because everything turns orange on their skin. So that's a little bit of a thought starter to get your brain juices flowing, but I'm going to demonstrate this principle through several makeup items just swatching on my arm. This isn't going to be an order of cool to warm because I do want them to sit next to each other and almost feel a little bit randomized so we can compare them. I'm just gonna start here with one of my absolute favorite cream bronzers. This is Mojave from Persona. I would categorize that as a neutral. It goes really well on my skin, but again, it's all relative. Like if you put that on your skin and you have, you know, a pale green undertone, you might end up with orangey peach on your skin. I don't know. And honestly, if you have like a deep warm undertone, that's just gonna turn kind of like gray on you, probably gray pink a little bit. So I'm asking you to think in terms of color, not in terms of what the company told you that the name of the shade is and what the product is designed to do. We're just talking about colors. It's a much easier way to think about things. Like talk about color, talk about formula. Doesn't matter what it's supposed to be. Next we have Makeup by Mario. This is fair. My hand is lumpy. That's not a pretty swatch. So that's cool. Now I could use that as a contour against something that is very warm. So for example, very warm is something like Terri from Persona. I'm using creams because it's so much easier to see. If I was swatching powders, you'd be like, heh, you know, so it's just for like visual communication purposes. But like Terri on a really beautiful golden undertone is like a very natural looking tan. On me, it's a very warm blush. And honestly, on a deep skin tone, it would be a really pretty kind of orangey blush, but it is extremely warm by comparison. So if you're looking at those by comparison to Terri and you're thinking, oh, those are obviously contours or very much at least fair as a contour. Here is Westman Atelier Biscuit, okay? And it's grayer, it's less saturated. So if you didn't watch my saturation video, a less saturated color basically has gray mixed into it, some proportion of white and black. And that is a simplified way of thinking of it from a, you know, from top down, from like a painter's standpoint. We don't need to talk about all the like fancy words associated with it because your face is already a face. It's not a canvas. I'm saying this for all the painters who are like, you know, with their typey fingers in the comments. We don't need to be talking about how to create a face. We already have a face to work on. So we're just talking about saturation in terms of something having gray added to it. That's going to desaturate it. And the purer the color itself, like the more neon, then that is going to be a super saturated version of a color. So this is less saturated, it's got gray in it, and so all of a sudden, like this very much becomes a bronzer by comparison, okay? And then we have This is like my favorite contour, honestly, like my favorite cream contour. And I don't even know if they really make it anymore, but look at that, like how beautifully kind of like desaturated that is. And it looks almost purple gray by comparison. And all of a sudden, everything else on my hand looks like it could be a bronzer. That's what I'm trying to get you to think about, is like, it's not so much that something has an identity as a contour or bronzer. I mean, I would venture to say that like, that's gonna be a contour on just about anybody. It would probably show up like, you know, pale white on deep skin, but has a great shade range. But my point is that, you know, yes, there are extremes, but in the middle, there's a lot of wiggle room. And that's what we're going to be playing with today, using that to your advantage. Now let's do it with some colors. I say colors, like that's like what I think of as a complexion product. I think of bronzer as complexion, bronzer and contour. So I'm gonna show y'all with some blushes. And I think that the best thing to do here is to demonstrate with like pinks, because we're going to use very polar shades on my face to demonstrate the effect that temperature has when you're putting on your makeup. But I want to show y'all the difference between like a cool saturated pink, a warm saturated pink, desaturated, what have you. So we have some very desaturated pinks here that are going to read as cool. So when I talk about cool versus warm, I just want to go ahead and say you can use desaturation as a form of coolness. That sounds confusing, but just think about that, right? It's not necessarily that it needs to be bluer to be cool. Sometimes it can just be grayer to be cool. Do you know what I mean? So it's all relative to your skin tone. I'm not telling like deep skinned people you need to put gray on your skin because it was going to look gray, but choosing a shade that is less saturated than your bronzer is also going to manipulate light, which is what we're doing when we're putting on makeup. It's going to manipulate shadow and light and give the illusion of a more exaggerated shadow. Texture can do it too. I'm going to demonstrate all of these for you. So here we have Latte from, wow, look at that with the color of my lips. I've got the Jouer Essential, what's it called, on my lips. I love this stuff. They sent me some more and I was like, I forgot how much I love this product. Speaking of Jouer, I have their double-ended guide here. Here we have what I would consider to be a medium saturated, somewhat cool pink, right? It's got more saturation to it than this and definitely more coolness because it's got blue to it, but it like looks more vivid because it's more saturated. All of these are going to be a little less saturated because my skin tone is so fair. I don't have a ton of things unless I have like the entire shade range. I tend to buy the colors that I think are going to work on me kind of thing. So like that is a very similar pink, right? But it's got less saturation. It's almost exactly the same like hue, but it's just got more gray to it. And so you can see like them being so close to each other. This appears cooler, but it's not because it has blue added to it. It's because it has gray added to it. Now I'm going to show you a very vivid, this is a very saturated pink, and this is Juice Box from Rhode. And that's when you start to see, oh wow, Kackie, all those looked really native on you. Like, are they really that desaturated? And then you see something that's super saturated and you're like, oh, okay, I need to like adjust my eyes for the fact that like Kakkie's skin tone is very, very pale and translucent. Because like that's just so extreme on me. So it's beautiful. I mean, it's truly like a neutral pink. It's not super cool or super warm, but it's just very saturated. And I like it a lot. Here we have Olivia. This one might be a little hard to see because it's shimmery, but this is from Thrive, and that is gonna be, you know, have so much white added to it. So I could argue this is actually kind of a warm pink. It's got a little bit of peachiness compared to the other stuff around it, but it's been so desaturated with white that it is going to appear really pastel on the skin. And then I just have one more here. I'm gonna use Glassy Pomelo from House Labs. I'm running out of room on my arm. And this is, again, a really fantastic, like neutral rosy pink. See, it makes this one look a little bit peach, and it's got that translucence to it. And so your skin shows through it, which can make it look less saturated, but it is quite a saturated shade. It just happens to be quite easy to see through. Let's jump into the makeup, but I'm gonna start first with my concealer because I wanna demonstrate one really helpful technique that's going to, again, illuminate how to use temperature even in the subtlest of ways. Okay, so I have here two concealers. This is the All Hours from YSL, and this is the Essential High Coverage Liquid Concealer from Jouer, another one that I absolutely adore. And you can see that the Jouer is a little bit cooler than the YSL. The Jouer is a pretty good skin tone match for me, and it's also really good for covering blemishes. It doesn't require a ton of product. It dries down to a really beautiful finish. And if I put it on with no other makeup, because it is such a good skin tone match in creme, it is virtually invisible. So I do that, right? We take this brush that I'm like really into. This little shape is just so pleasing to me. This is the Sigma F43. Just blendy real quick. Look at how that just goes away. And I grabbed the YSL All Hours because the color worked. It's not necessarily my favorite formula. I actually prefer the Givenchy Prism Libre, but it was a little bit too similar. I wanted the warmth for demonstration. Look at that. Look at that. I'm not even into putting concealer underneath my eyes right now. That is just so seamless. My God. And I also think it's helped by the Lisa Eldridge. Like nothing looks bad on top of that Lisa Eldridge skin tint. Okay, so yes, pretty good shade match for me in terms of just matching my skin. You know, it's like painting on better skin essentially. Now, if I take something that's warmer, I'm gonna put it right here because what we're trying to do is build the illusion that there is a lift here or that it's coming towards you. Warmth comes towards you and coolness recedes from the eye. Saturation comes towards you. Desaturation recedes from the eye. Even a shiny texture can come towards you, and that's different from painting. Painting is different. All my painters out there, yes, we add all sorts of oily, lovely substances to make shadows deeper. That's not how it works on the skin, okay? Because light is going to hit the shiny parts of your face or the sparkly parts of your face, and that's what's going to appear to like come forward. And something that is matte-er, you know, by comparison, by the same token, is going to absorb light and look like it is receding from the eye. All of those tools can be used to manipulate light and shadow on your face. So I'm going to demo the subtle effect that this can have, because that is a yellower concealer than the one that I already have on. And I'm going to take the tiny version of that brush. I can't get over these. Like there's just this, such a pleasant little dome. I don't know, it reminds me of like a hamburger bun from like McDonald's. I'm just like, it's surreal. It's like, it shouldn't be that round. Anyway, there's something wrong with me. There's a lot wrong with me. This is the F72 from Sigma. And if I stick that right there, all of a sudden we're lifted, you know? I should have just done it on one side and shown you, but you can see still. Look at the lift we got on my cheeks, right? That little bit, and it's just because we used a different color. It's not necessarily because we have more coverage. Isn't that interesting? So you can kind of start to think about the way that you can use different things in your collection that might not have even been ideal for you before. Like, oh, that's too warm. Maybe try using it, you know, to pull focus in a way that you haven't thought of before, manipulate light a little bit. It's all about playing. That's why we do makeup and not tattoos on this channel. All right, bronzer over here, color cosmetics over here, and I'm going to focus on two main fundamentals here. Contour, bronzer, right? Okay, because light comes down from the sun. That is one thing we all have in common, the sun. And by virtue of that, I was wearing a red sweatshirt earlier. I got fuzz under my arm, sorry. And by virtue of that, it's going to create shadow anywhere that the light isn't, right? So that's going to be anywhere that's like technically like under. And I'll show you how to find that and exaggerate it in just a second. And we're going to think about color cosmetics as cool, warm. Because we want it to come towards the eye. We want to give the illusion of plumpness. So the reason that we're doing it that way is because things like contour and bronzer, which I do consider to be complexion products, are about creating a true illusion that is like believable to the eye. I feel like color cosmetics are sort of like creative, you know, a lot more creative than you want to get with your bronzer and your contour. And so it's not about being right or wrong. It's about picking the colors that you want to either achieve what you have in your head, or if you're done with your makeup or you're halfway through and you're looking at it and you're like, it's not really doing what I want it to do. It's about being able to diagnose the problem with what you're seeing and know the right steps to get it to what you want, you know, not what I want, what you want. Let's talk about contour first. I'm going to kind of work in layers. We're going to go like subtle to extreme on both sides, just sort of take turns, because I think that a lot of people are very afraid of contour. They're like, I'm gonna end up with a dirt stripe on my face, and any amount of contour that I use is like super obvious, super visible, whatever. And I'm gonna show you that like even the subtlest of temperature changes can make a big difference in just the appearance. And I want to empower y'all to be comfortable using it if you want to. So this is a technique, a little trick that I have kind of stumbled on, right? Just being in bad lighting, and I'm like, oh, that's how you can see where you're supposed to contour on your face. And I know I have an angular face. I'm gonna get in the comments and be like, sure, easy for you to say, you've got cheekbones kind of thing. But you know, you could also argue that it's a pretty good visual demonstration, right? So I'm gonna take my light, I'm gonna turn it down. I'm gonna take the flashlight on my phone, I'm gonna turn it on. Straight down, as if it's like the frickin' sun, right? And you start to see, as you like turn your head up, right? You start to see where shadows occur. So it's like under here, under here, under here, under here. And as soon as you start training your eye for that, you're like, oh, those are all the spots that I can put contour that are gonna look believable on me because I already have a shadow there. I'm not gonna teach y'all how to change your facial features today, okay? Like, I'm not a 2014, 2016 YouTuber out here teaching you how to pinch your nose. I'm just teaching you how to make contour not look like a dirt stripe on your face today, okay? If you wanna like go full drag and like truly change your facial features, there are a million creators out there that could do a much better job of showing you than I can, so. That is sort of like how I suggest like finding the places where you would contour, right? It just really exaggerates the shadows. So that's how we're gonna think about this. And like I said, I'm gonna work in layers so that you can see that like a subtle effect is just as effective as a exaggerated effect. It's just about choosing what you want and also balancing them with each other. And with contour, especially if you're afraid of it, I don't recommend putting it straight on the face. You know, use all of the restraint that you want because it's easy to put more on and a little harder to take it off, you know, or cover it up. And so I'm gonna spread it all the way out of my hand like that, get it on that same brush, and going to basically shadow everywhere that I saw a shadow when I did that with my light. You don't have to shade all the places that I'm shading. You can do whatever you want. I got a comment one time that was like, actually, you know, if you shade this area on your temple, it's gonna make you look older or whatever. And I was like, do what you want. You know what I mean? I'm not the boss of you. I'm not your real dad. This is a very controversial spot to put contour, and I always do like the, you know, try and like mash my chin in as much as I can to make sure that we're not ending up with a really strong line of demarcation. And truth be told, like that's the most contour I really feel comfortable putting someplace like that, that is more or less like it's such a movable plane on your face. Like it moves so much and you are often not aware of it, that is one where you could get caught unawares. You know what I mean? You're walking around and everybody sees it, but you, I would recommend like always erring on the side of something being really, really chill and like low contrast against your skin on that part. But the other thing is to make sure that when you use a contour or even a bronzer, whatever's up against your hairline, make sure that it goes into your hairline because that's going to give the most believable illusion. Real quick, I want to introduce the idea of topography, and you can take this or leave it. If it doesn't make sense to you, if it doesn't resonate for you, ignore what I'm about to say, but for some people it really makes it click. Think about you're lying down, right? And your head is backwards like this, okay? And think about your face as a mountain range. Altitude that's like closer to the sun essentially. And so even if it's not something that has a shadow to it, sometimes it's just a place that has the same altitude as this part of your cheek, you know? And you're like, oh, it would make sense to build shadow there in order to make the contour all look believable and all look, you know, synchronized on your face. You can kind of think of like that being the same altitude as right there. Again, if that doesn't help you, disregard. I put it on my hairline sometimes. That's all you need to know. Now we're gonna go in with a warm bronzer. And we're gonna use a very similar formula here. This is the original Soft Sculpt Transforming Skin Enhancer in Light. So that was Fair, which is going to be cooler by comparison, not by much, but definitely cooler by comparison, both from Makeup by Mario. And I'm going to put put that on this big bad boy brush because I love using it. This is the 105 from BK, and I'm gonna be gentle here, but it's just great because it diffuses the product really well. Don't be afraid of a brush this big. I feel like it actually puts on less product. So, the subtlest amount of warmth right where the altitude starts to increase, you know, where your cheek pokes out from underneath. Like that's your contour area. This is where sort of the light would start to hit from the sun. That's gonna create this plumpness illusion. So it really hardly takes any. And you can also then push that difference because look, now all of a sudden we've got this beautiful round shape that's more accentuated than this side. Like everything, look at that. Isn't that wild how that like immediately made my cheek look rounder than it does on this side? Like you would argue that like that is flatter, but it's, I mean, ostensibly not, hopefully. I'm not that asymmetrical, but put it on my forehead. That was a little much. A little bit right there on my nose. Look at the plumpness we just created, okay? And if I want my eye to kind of recede, I can also powder it a little bit. So that inner corner, I can take something and just throw a little bit of powder right there, and it's not the difference in a color, it's the difference in a texture that you're not seeing shine anymore, and so it's not distracting. Okay, now we're gonna work on this side of my face, and I'm going to show you kind of the first layer of warm versus cool going in this direction, right? We're working in 4 dimensions today. And that is this trend that's been happening. All of these brands are putting out these duos essentially of an orange blush and like a cool mauve blush. That's what we're going to use to demonstrate these things today. I'm not going to try and disturb your eyes with like a cool pink and a warm pink, okay? We're going to work in polar colors to make it very visually evident what's going on. So we have Georgia and Carmel. These are the new shades from Persona. I don't know if you can tell, but I really like these. I didn't used to like them because I didn't love the colors, but they've been coming out with some absolute banger colors lately. So we're dealing with 2 shades that are quite different from each other. Not quite all the way to orange, not quite all the way to lilac, but I feel like this is a good place to start, and it's also going to build the opacity for me to work on top with brighter colors that aren't going to like look like they're levitating off of my skin. If the language that I'm using doesn't make total sense to you, I have a playlist of all of my color theory videos so far, and when you watch all of them, there aren't that many, it'll all click, like they all synergize together. Again, I'm not gonna be working directly onto the skin because good God, but I do want to use Carmel back here. Again, we're working cool to warm this way instead of cool warm. And that's just, again, so that you can manipulate it, not because it is the right or wrong way to do it. So we are using the topography mentality for this. In other words, it's further away from you, so we're going to accentuate that it's further away from you, like it's very lateral. I'm gonna also put it here, and this is gonna look clowny. This is for the purposes of the demonstration. So we're not going like underneath the nose or underneath the lip or something like that, but we are going in places that we want to create depth with color. Now we're going to go in gently with Georgia on the front here, the top of the mountain as it were. And because it's translucent and you're seeing your skin through it, it's not going to be as severe. So fear not. We're not going directly in with, you know, super strong pigments here, but you do begin to see that like the purple is accentuating the depth, and then do you see how that's coming forward? And it's funny because it's like, because these are working vertically, you're getting vertical lift, and because these are working horizontally, you're getting horizontal volume. Right? Cool? Did that click? Lift, volume, boom. I love when language actually makes itself available to me. Useful language. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is just kind of push the limits here, right? I want to kind of push the extremes on both sides. And I'm gonna do that with the Oma and with Teddy, okay? Teddy is like really warm, almost orange. So you're going to see this side of my face start to kind of come to life, almost in kind of a latte makeup way. But really what we're doing is we're taking the coolness cooler and more intense, and we're taking the warmth warmer and more intense. Do you see how the plumpness is still achieved? And because the intensity is matched between the contour and the bronzer, it still doesn't look extreme because they're balancing each other out. Neither one of them is making the other one look extreme by comparison. All right, we're gonna get very visually extreme here, and I'm actually really grateful that this exists. Again, every brand is putting out these duos that are orange and lilac, and this one is from Jouer, and it is not kidding around. It came with a warning on it that was like, these are really pigmented, really vivid, so just, you know, exercise caution. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to exercise caution. All right, so for kind of the back of my cheek here, I'm going to show, again, like a very extreme version. Yes, this is a saturated cool tone by comparison. You could argue it's warmer than other purples, right? So it's like if you have this shade and then you have, you know, this shade right here in Makeup Forever, because it's less saturated, it's gonna look cooler on the skin. But I figured we would just kind of keep it basic in this demonstration just to show you that even though they're vivid, they're still going to have the same effect because we're comparing them to one another. Look at that. Whoa! So again, this is creating a little bit of depth that we're working this way. So it's going to build volume in the cheeks. Like, could this side use this side and this side use this side? Yes, absolutely. Like, I, you know, wish we could just combine them, but that's literally every makeup look I ever do is combining them. That's why we're breaking it apart today. Okay, and then we have the Clementine shade. This is Violet and Clementine. And so Clementine is, whoa boy, very coral, very orangey coral. God. Deep skin tones, like, rejoice. This is just such a satisfying little duo. You see? You see how, like, it blends together? You get the difference in the purple, if we kind of, you know, work them together, the purple to the coral, and it's building volume in this direction. You can almost, it's almost disappearing back there. It's so high contrast. So what I can do is use a little bit more of something peach to add some opacity to it, because that's going to keep it from looking so bananas and, like, you know, bridge this gap in a way that looks a little bit more natural. Not that natural is what we're going for, but it is an option. See, just use a little bit more of Georgia to blend the gap there. I think that we've gone extreme enough in the examples here. I mean, if I wanted to, I could go all the way in this direction. I think, I don't know, why not? Why not? Why not, right? Boop, boop, boop. This is the new Makeup by Mario. Get even more plumpness right there. Like, get that really, like, juicy. It's like the texture and the color. Yep, see? Really drives the point home, because that was powder. That was all powder. And so it's like using a warm tone in something that also has some shine to it. It just exaggerates even more of the difference between the cool and the warm. This is like blush blindness in a nutshell, but I like it. Now I just want to show y'all, this was sort of what I had planned to do in terms of texture, to show y'all how texture can also be used to manipulate light on both of these techniques, on both, you know, philosophies essentially. So I have here Quartz Glow in the Glow Sculpt from Say, one of the products that I do really like from Say, and it is this beautiful bronzery, goldy, highlighter-y thing. And if I place that kind of right here, you get more of that lift, because yes, it's warm, but it also has shimmer and a little bit of a creamy texture that's making the light play off of that spot a little bit differently. See? And I can do the same thing with something very, honestly, benign. You know, we can go pretty neutral here. This is this Makeup Forever little palette. I love this thing. And, you know, I've got this great champagne color here. And if I work that, that's why we do it on our brow and here, is because, like, topography wise, like, those are the same elevation. I know I'm combining a lot of techniques in this one, but I think y'all are ready. And that is why we use highlighter the way we use highlighter. I'm going to throw some brows on real quick, because I also want to demo this technique on my lips. Now, I ignored my eyes in this, but your eyes, that could be a whole nother video, but it would be demonstrating the exact same thing. And it's why I always say that you can use all the product that you use on the rest of your face as your eyeshadow. You don't necessarily need to have a specific eyeshadow palette if you really like the colors that you're using on the rest of your face. If you want to use like an indie palette and get like glitter and multi-chrome and things like that, you know, have at it. Be my guess. But as far as like the fundamentals are concerned, you do not need like a basics palette for your eyes. You can just use your complexion products and your color cosmetics that you already used on your skin. All right, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you're probably familiar with my lip contour technique. I have the main product that I typically use for it in my hand right here. This is the Rabanne Love Balm in Soul Kiss, and it's just a phenomenal, weird, translucent kind of brown gray. It's so awesome. It looks good on everybody. And it doesn't have a fragrance. It doesn't have plumping. It doesn't have pH color adjusting. It's just a really good lip balm. You can also use something like, if you have it on hand, like Chanel Boy, you know, that's gonna be another great kind of like gray toned contour for the lips. And it's got a little bit more brown to it, but they're both, the key is that they're both quite translucent. So look, we have two different temperature values. This makes this one, this is Boy, look so warm, but it's hilarious because Boy is not warm at all. Like it's practically gray in the tube, but it looks warm by comparison because this one is so almost purple. So I am going to use the Rabanne today just because it's the one that I think has the most visual impact. And what I will do is, again, think of my face as like the depth right here, right? Same way we contoured here, you have shadow that builds right there, and I'm just gonna basically color it in with this, right? Color it in. And suddenly you have plumpness because it looks like there's a bigger difference between the corner of your mouth and the front of your mouth. And then I will take a gloss over top of that that just is kind of my lip color. Again, we're sort of working in complexion tones over here. I don't want to get too creative. And so I am using, I love this stuff, the Ami Collet Lip Treatment Oil in Bliss. It is so my lips with better, and it's just such a freaking beautiful formula. Oh my God. So you don't even have to bring it all the way onto the contour, but like you can see that this is shiny, and so it's going to look like it's coming towards you. It's also my lip color, which is warmer by comparison to the Rabanne. The Rabanne is more matte. It's also very thin on the skin, and it's going to just give the illusion of shadow by being cooler and less saturated and make my lips look plumper. And I swear, it doesn't matter how close you get to me, you can't see it. Now I'm gonna show you in very extreme terms with two very expensive lip products that I spent my own money on. You do not need to do that, but this is a fun little game. I just want to use them. So I have here two Hermes lipsticks. I have Prune Noir, a very beautiful, cool, plummy, pruny purple. And then I have Brilliant Poppy, and it's glittery. So it's gonna have even more kind of like shimmery, shiny impact. And it is orange. So it's just really driving the point home. Did I need to do this? No, but my soul needed to do this, you know? Here we go. Hermes Prune Noir. Oh, smells so good. It smells kind of fruity. Ooh. Same shape. And then Brilliant Poppy. And that is going to be very exaggerated by comparison to this. I'm sure that people are going to prefer this because it just looks more believable. But this is just a really exaggerated way of thinking about it because obviously like orange and purple are so warm and cool compared to each other. And that one is very visible up close. You know? So what was I trying to drive home today? That we can use contour and bronzer. So basically a cool versus a warm complexion color in contrast to one another to build vertical volume. And then on this side, I showed you how we can use colors that are cool and warm relative to one another, and also texture and saturation and things like that in order to create volume as if things are plumper and coming towards you. So I understand that those are like commonly held positives of makeup. You know, it's like not everybody is like, I want a lifted, plumper complexion. Like I understand that that's not what everybody's going for with their makeup. The main thing here was to show you how to exaggerate what's already there on my face, because it's like, okay, your cheeks, they do this and they do this. So let's make them do this and this a little harder. And then you can, you know, use all those skills however you want. But the point is not that we are thinking in terms of the color wheel, like blue is cool and orange is warm kind of thing. I mean, that was what I did here for demonstration purposes, but we're also talking about the subtleties of two shades just sitting next to each other, and one is cool and one is warm relative to one another, not inherently by identity. Does that make sense? And it doesn't have to be bluer to be cooler, it can just be grayer to be cooler. And it also doesn't have to be brighter and more saturated to be warmer. You can also use something like texture and shine. So like a glitter or any kind of dewy finish is going to make something also appear as if it's coming towards you. So I hope that that was clear enough. I hope that the visual really drove the point home, and I hope y'all enjoyed this. If you did, please do give the video a thumbs up. If this is my first video you're watching, go watch the whole playlist and this will make a lot more sense. I do feel like this might be kind of like a curriculum 2.0 kind of thing because I use so many words that I used in previous videos, but there is a video pretty much for everything and I'm continuing to make them. Request those down below. If you have any color theory videos, let me know down below, request them, and I will absolutely make my way through making them. And I love y'all so much. I'll put the playlist right here. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye y'all.